Hey folks, Danny Mize with the Nitty Gritty, and this video is going to be my twisted blanket pattern. It is one of my favorites for beginner knitters to learn how to knit a baby blanket, and you can knit it really any size that you want. It's a very flexible pattern. I've made it as a throw blanket for the couch, as well as newborn blankets, child-sized blankets. You're gonna love it. It's real simple, and it's a great way to learn some of the basics of knitting while also being able to produce something that is really, really nice for a loved one or for a newborn in the family. As we begin to roll out more patterns for everybody, we'd love to hear that feedback. So please make sure that you follow us and subscribe here on Nitty Gritty on YouTube, and get over to our website, knittinggritty.com, and you'll be able to find these patterns. I appreciate everybody for following along. Let's get to it. All right, we're here to begin work on the twisted blanket pattern. And this is one of my favorites for baby blankets, and you can knit it larger for a throw blanket. One of the nice things about this pattern is the gauge isn't really the most important thing. You can do some quick math and you can make this blanket as large or as small as you want. I've made it as a throw blanket and as a baby blanket, so I want you to keep that in mind. You can make this really to fit whatever your needs are, but what we're going to do is we're going to start in the long tail cast on, and we're going to cast on 187 stitches. This pattern is knit in the pattern itself. The actual twisted pattern is knit in increments of 10 plus 5. So if you're going to do 10 of the twists, that'd be 10 times 10 is 100 stitches, and then you'd add 5 to finish it off. So you'd need 105 stitches. On top of that, we're going to have a 6-stitch border on each end, 6 stitches of the seed stitch as the border of this blanket. So you're going to have the increments of 10 plus 5 extra stitches, so we'd need that 105 plus 12 for the border on each side, 6 stitches on each side for the border, which would give us 117. In this case, we're going to do 17 of the pattern, 17 of the twists in this blanket, and that's going to match the pattern that I've written. So we're going to do 170 stitches plus that extra 5, like I mentioned, and then we'll have the 6 on each end for the border for a total of 187 stitches. So that's what we're going to start with. We're going to cast on 187 stitches. If you've seen any of my videos in the past, this will look familiar. I like to use an extra needle when I'm casting on to keep the stitches nice and loose. Once I'm done casting on the stitches, I'm going to pull out that extra needle, and you'll see they stay real nice and loose. So I'm going to continue on with my 187 stitches. I'm not going to force you to watch me to the end, so I'll pick up with you when I get there. Alright, so we're back, and I've got my 187 stitches cast on here. One thing I failed to mention is I'm doing this on circular needles. These are 36-inch cable circular needles on size 10. You can do this in, again, any size that you want. One of the nice things about this pattern is the versatility. Gauge doesn't really matter. Use whatever yarn you want, make it as big or as small as you want. Use whatever size needles you want, and just make sure you do some math before to get it to the size that you want. You can follow the pattern that I have for this, and it's going to come out to about 46 inches by 36. If you follow this 187 stitches, on the yarn that I'm using is Cascade Yarns, Sarasota Chunky. It calls for 9 or 10 needles, so you can use that if you want. But again, you can knit this on really anything. So I have the 187 stitches, and what we're going to start with is 7 rows of the seed stitch. Seed stitch is pretty simple. If you've never done it before, it's great to use. It's a great pattern to use on the border of washcloths, blankets, sometimes scarves, anything really that needs a border. So we're going to start with a knit. We're going to purl, and we're just going to follow that all the way across this row, and we're going to do it for 7 rows. So knit, purl, but you see when we come back across the second row, I'll show you what makes this the actual seed stitch pattern. So knit, purl, we're going to do that all the way across. You can see I am knitting for my first 20 stitches or so. I'm going to knit both the working yarn and the tag end together, and that's just going to make your cast on stitches more secure. It's going to make sure that the yarn, this tag end, doesn't pull out in the wash or anything like that with the kids playing with it. It's just going to make it more secure, so you don't really have to count how many stitches you're doing that with, just till you feel comfortable. I'll probably end up doing it about 20 though. So we're going to continue this knit, purl all the way to the end. I'll just go until I drop this tag end, and then I won't make you watch me knit, purl 187 stitches, but alright, so I'm pretty much to the point now. Let me do one more pair where I'm going to drop this tag end. Again, I wasn't counting or anything, but that looks about good to me. So I'm going to continue this seed stitch pattern now just with my working yarn. I just hold that tag end out there and I can sew it back in later. But we're going to continue knit, purl. Oops, getting a little ahead of myself there. And we're going to continue knit, purl all the way until the end of this first row, and then we'll turn it and I'll pick up with you guys at that point. Alright, so we're wrapping up here at the end of row 1, finishing up that knit, purl for the first row of the seed stitch. And normally when you're casting on in even stitches. With the seed stitch, one thing you'll notice, we often cast on in odd stitches. So ideally, if I'm knitting a rib or something, I'd end on a purl because I started with a knit and I'm going to end on a purl. But here with the seed stitch, I'm going to end in a knit stitch there because I have an odd number of stitches. Now it's going to make that easy to continue in the seed stitch pattern when I turn it around. So one thing you'll notice on the seed stitch pattern is now, instead of continuing like I would in a rib pattern of purling the purls and knitting the knits, purl, knit, I'm actually going to knit the purls and I'm going to purl the knit stitches. So I'm going to knit the opposite of what I see. So this last one is a purl stitch. You can see it's kind of closed off there, right? Knit stitches look a little different. So if I come down the row a little bit, you'll see this knit, this is a purl stitch. It's closed, it's got that wrap right up against the needle. Knit stitch is open, you got that V shape. Purl is closed, knit is open with that V. So when I see those closed stitches, I'm going to knit. So really, you can remember it that way, or you can just know that you're going to knit, purl all the way to the end. But if you lose track, knowing what the stitches look like is helpful. So again, I'm just going to knit, purl all the way again to the end. And we're going to do this 7 rows. This is row 2. So knit, purl, and we're going to do that all the way to the end. Now, when we get to row 3 and 4, that's really where you'll see the seed stitch start to take shape. But I'll get a couple through here and show you. So now we can see we're alternating. I got the purl here, up here, and I've got the purl down here, purl up here. So it's going to be alternating those stitches, and that's what makes it the seed stitch pattern. And you see it just looks like a bunch of bumps or little tiny seeds spread out across your fabric. So we're going to do this knit, purl all the way to the end of row 2. We'll turn it again. So I'll probably pick you up at the end of these seed stitch rows and show you what that looks like at the end. So I'm going to keep knitting across here in row 2, but I'll come back with you guys at the end of row 7 when we'll have 7 rows of the seed stitch, and you'll really be able to see what it looks like. So catch you guys then. So after we finish those 7 seed stitch rows, that's really the end of the first section of our project. And we're going to move now into the second section, which would be the beginning of the actual twisted pattern. The pattern is 10 stitches long and it is 8 rows long. So 8 rows is going to finish the actual twisted pattern, but we're going to start with 2 setup rows. So we've knit the first 7 seed stitch rows. Now we're going to move into 2 setup rows, which is going to be actually row 7 and row 8 of the twisted pattern itself. But we are going to make sure, one thing that I've seen folks when we're doing a border like this seed stitch, often we'll forget that we're doing it. So what I want to make sure that you guys pay attention to is we are going to start every single row with 6 stitches of the seed stitch pattern. So it's going to be knit, purl, knit, purl, and then one more pair, knit and purl. So that's how we're going to start every single row for the rest of our blanket until we're ending with the top border. So 6 stitches of the seed stitch, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Then for our first setup row, it's again going to be row 7 of the twisted pattern itself, but it is just knit across. So we're going to knit across all the stitches until we have 6 stitches remaining on our needle. And then we will finish the row with 6 stitches of the seed stitch pattern. So bear with me, I'm not going to make you watch me all the way to the end, but let's get to the other side. Make sure you stop before the end when you still have 6 stitches remaining on your left needle, and we'll go back into that seed stitch pattern. So I'll pick you guys up on the other end. So I've worked to the end of this first setup row. I've knit all the stitches until I had 6 remaining. Now we're going to work the seed stitch pattern. So I had mentioned before, we're going to knit the opposite of what we see. So here I've got a knit stitch, which means I'm going to start with a purl, and then I'll just alternate till I finish. So purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, and knit. So that gets us to the end of the first setup row. We're just going to turn our work now. Let's see, it's getting all bunched up on our 36-inch needle and cable here, but here we are. We're going to work now our second setup row. And if you remember when we cast stitches on, I said this pattern is increments of 10 plus 5. This is where we're going to first see those plus 5. So first we'll start with these 6 seed stitch stitches here. Knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Now we're going to work our second setup row. The second setup row is going to start by eating up those extra 5 stitches that we cast on. So we did increments of 10 plus 5, and then of course the 6 seed stitch for the seed stitch pattern on each end. But here's where we're first going to eat up those extra 5 stitches. On some rows they're going to be on the front of the row, and on other rows during the pattern they'll be on the back. So this is row 8 of the pattern, but again our second setup row. So row 8 of the pattern is going to be knit 1, purl 3, 2, 3, knit 1, and then the actual repeating part will be purl 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, knit 1, purl 3, 1, 2, 3, and then finish with a knit 1. So that's the repeating part. Purl 5, knit 1, purl 3, knit 1. That's going to make up the 10 stitches of the actual twisted pattern, and we're going to repeat that till we get to the end, and we just have the 6 stitches remaining for the seed stitch border. So again, we're going to purl 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, knit 1, and then purl 3. Oops, be careful there, you're not dropping stitches like me. 1, 2, 3, knit 1. So purl 5, knit 1, purl 3, knit 1. That will be our final setup row. And when we get to the end with 6 stitches remaining, don't forget to knit those final 6 stitches in the seed stitch pattern. We'll turn the work and we'll go back the other way with row 1 of the twisted pattern. All right, so we finished that second setup row and we're into the full body of the twisted pattern now. So we're gonna start, if you're following along in the pattern, this will be row 1 of the twisted pattern, and it's the first time we actually do the twist. So we're gonna start off with those 6 seed stitch pattern stitches. I'm gonna knit, purl, knit, purl, just like we've been doing, knit, purl. So that's our border stitches. Again, just 6 of those in the seed stitch pattern. Then we're going to go into purl 1, and for the twist part you can use a cable needle. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know I prefer to use just a regular double pointed needle for my cables or anything where I'm slipping stitches and holding them in the front of the back. What we're going to do is we're going to slip 2 stitches, hold them in the front, knit the next stitch. Okay. We're going to move the slip stitches now to the back. And it's interesting, we're going to knit the stitch to the left first. So I'm losing a little focus here. So we're going to knit that stitch. And we're going to knit the right stitch without slipping either one off. And then we're going to slip them both off at the same time. Pull that a little tight, and you can see it's going to create a twist in the fabric there. Set that down. We're then going to follow up that twist with a purl, and we're going to knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is all 10 stitches for this pattern. So it's again in increments of 10. We're going to repeat this across the entire row now. So again, that was purl 1, then we work the 3 stitch twist where we slip the first 2 stitches, hold them in the front, knit the next one, move those stitches again to the back. We're going to knit them off in this fashion where we knit the one on the left, knit the one on the right, slip both off together, pull that tight, and that's it. Finish up the 10 stitches with a purl, that's stitch 5, and then we knit 5, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are the 10 stitches of the pattern. I'll do it one more time so you can see it. Purl 1, slip 2, hold in front, knit the next stitch off the left needle, move the slip stitches to the back again, knit the one on the left, but keep them both on, knit the stitch on the right, and then slip them off together, pull that part tight, finish up with purl 1, and then knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to repeat this process across across the entire row. Make sure when you get to the end, you're paying attention to those seed stitch, to that seed stitch border, and you get those 6 stitches knit in the seed stitch at the end of the row. And then we'll turn it around. We'll come back for row number 2. All right, so coming up to the end of the first row of the twisted pattern, we finished with a purl 1. We worked the 3-stitch twist, purled 1. Now we've got the 6 stitches remaining, which is just our border, the seed stitch border. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. At the end of that, we'll go ahead and turn the work. And now, going back the other direction, we're going to work row 2 of the pattern. There's no twisting in the second row. We're going to start off with, like we've been doing, with the 6 stitches of the border, that seed stitch pattern. Knit, purl, 2 more, knit, purl. Okay, so the border's out of the way. We're going to come back across now with knit 1. We're going to purl the 3 stitches that were the twist. Oop, make sure that you're holding on to the stitches there. So 3 purl, we're going to knit 1, then purl 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to be the repeat. Is we're going to knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, purl 5. That's the 10 stitches of the pattern, and that 10 stitches repeats, of course, just like every row is going to do. So again, we're going to knit, purl 3, 1, 2, oops, splitting stitches there. Let me redo that one. Purl, purl, so 3 purls, then a knit, 5 purls, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's the repeating here. Knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, purl 5. Knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, purl 5. We're going to repeat that again till we get to the last 6 stitches, and we'll pick you up on row 3 of the pattern. All right, so we finished row 2. We have turned it. Row 3 is the easiest row. So row 3 and row 7, we're just knitting all the stitches across. So we're going to start with the 6 border stitches in the seed stitch pattern again. Probably bored of me saying that by now, but there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And like I said, row 3 is simply knit stitch all the way across until you get to the final 6 stitches. Make sure you don't forget to do your seed stitch pattern at the end of the row, and then we'll turn and come back with row 4. All right, so we finished the knit stitches. So we knit all the way across the row on row 3. Now we're back for row 4 of the pattern. We're going to cover our first 6 stitches again, seed stitch pattern. There we go. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now for row 4, it's going to be pretty simple again. We're still not back to a twist row. We're just going to do the setup because the row after this is going to have the next twist. So here we're going to do purl 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to knit 1 and purl 3. 1, 2, 3, knit 1. So that's what we're going to do across this whole row 4. Again, that was purl 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Knit 1, purl 3. 1, 2, 3, knit 1. Purl 5, knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, all the way across the board. Stop again, make sure you get those last 6 stitches in as the seed stitch for your border, and we'll pick up when we come back for row 5. Alright, so we finished row 4, we're headed back the other direction on row 5. We're going to cover our first 6 border stitches. If I can focus here, purl, okay. We're going to come then with this row 5 is our second twist row in the pattern. Again, the twisted stitch pattern is 8 rows. And the first twist comes in row 1, the second twist comes in row 5. So this is row 5, we're going to come in now with our second twist row. So we're going to purl, we're going to knit 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The pattern shows you that if you're watching it, so you can't really get too lost. Purl 1, and now we've got those 3 knit stitches in a row. That's going to be our twist. So if you remember from row 1, first we're going to pull 2 stitches onto your cable needle, knit the next stitch off the left needle, move those cable stitches to the front, knit the second one, meaning the one to the left, then knit the first one or the one on the right, slip both off at the same time, give that a tug, tighten it up, and that's the twist. And then we're going to end with a purl. It's knit 5, purl 1, 3 stitch twist, purl 1. Again, knit 5, purl 1, 3 stitch twist, purl 1. And we're going to repeat that till the end of the row. Don't forget your 6 border stitches, and then we'll come back the other way again with row 6. Coming back now on row 6, let's get these border stitches out of the way. And one more purl there. So now row 6 is going to be a little simpler, no twists. We're just going to purl 5. Knit 1, purl 3 across the ones we twisted, 2, 3, knit 1, so that was purl 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, knit 1, purl 3, 1, 2, 3, knit 1. So those are the 10. We're going to repeat those across all of row 6. And then we continue that across the whole row. Purl 5, knit 1, purl 3, knit 1. When we get to the end, once again, don't forget the last 6 stitches as your seed stitch border. We'll turn it around, come back for row 7, and I'll pick you up there. All right, so we're back again after row 6, starting row 7. We're going to cover the first 6 like always. And row 7 is, again, like I said, row 3 and row 7 are the 2 easiest because all we're doing is knitting straight across. So we've covered our 6 border stitches. Now all we are going to do is knit stitch all the way across row 7, and then I split that one there. Pick that back up. So knit all the way across row 7 until we get to the final 6 stitches. Work our border, and then we'll turn it back around and come to row 8. Row 8 will be our final row of the twisted pattern, and then we're just going to repeat rows 1 through 8 until you reach the desired length of your blanket. If you're following my pattern, my printed pattern, it should be about 35 stitches that you'll work the twisted pattern for about 35 inches. Give yourself an inch so that you can work the final border, 7 border rows, and we'll go from there. So I'll pick you back up at the end of row 7, beginning of row 8. We'll finish up the pattern and then let you guys get knitting the rest of the blanket. See ya at the end of row 7. All right, so end of row 7, beginning of row 8. We're going to cover, and you'll hear me say this for the final time, we're going to cover the 6 border stitches, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now in row 8 is the final row, again, of our twisted stitch pattern. And we're going to repeat rows 1 through 8 of this pattern until you get to the desired length. Like I said in the last row, that's going to be about 35 inches if you're following the pattern, my printed pattern. But you can make this really as big as you want. So you don't have to stick to that, but for my purposes, I like it about 46 inches wide and about 35, 36 inches long. So we're going to continue this row 1 through 8 until we get to that desired length. So the final row 8 and the final row is going to be after the first 6 border stitches. We are going to knit 1, purl 3, 2 and 3, knit 1, purl 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to continue that pattern until the end of row 8. So again, that was knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, purl 5, knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, purl 5, and we are going to continue that all across row 8. And I'll pick you up at the end. I'll discuss a little bit the rest of the pattern and the rest of the project, and we'll review and take a look at kind of how this is shaping up, so you can see that before I sign off until we get to the final border. So again, knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, purl 5. We're going to do that to the end, and I'll see you there. All right, so we finished up the 8th and final row of the twisted stitch pattern. All I want to do is pull this out a little bit and inspect what we've been working on, because up until this point I haven't even looked at it, but as you can see, it really starts to shape up. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. We can get maybe a better view of this. So we've got the 7 rows of the border or the seed stitch, and then here you can start to see what that twisted stitch looks like. You can see it here. You see it again here, and the further you get into the blanket, the better that's going to start to show up, obviously. Again, you are going to repeat these 8 rows until you hit the desired length. One last time, if you're following my printed pattern, that's going to be about 35 inches because we want a total of 36 inches or so. The final inch, maybe inch and a half, is going to be another border, 7 border rows of the seed stitch pattern. So knit and continue in this pattern until you get to the desired length, and then we're going to switch over for 7 rows of the seed stitch pattern. I'm going to continue knitting until I get to that point, and I'm at the desired length, and I'll pick up back up with you. We'll see what the entire blanket looks like, and then we're going to go ahead and work those 7 rows of the seed stitch, and we'll bind off and block it. If you haven't yet, make sure that you subscribe to the Nitty Gritty. Hit the like button on this video. If you like, leave us a comment. Let me know how I can improve patterns such as this. Maybe make things a little bit more clear for you all. And or if you just have any questions about us in general, let me know. I'll talk to you guys soon. All right, folks. So I am just about done with this blanket. I'm gonna unroll it here. We'll look a little bit at the pattern, how it turned out. I can't get it all in the frame here for you guys, but as you can see, it can be as big or as small as you want it to be. But let me undo this all here. What we're going to go through now today is I'm just going to show you the final
few rows here and what that looks like with the seed stitch pattern. So we started with the seed stitch. We are going to end with the seed stitch, and we're going to knit 7 rows of that seed stitch pattern, and then we're just going to bind off. So nothing too special here, but wanted to make sure that we got back on the camera for these final couple rows, just so you could see the progress, make sure your pattern is looking the same as my pattern. So we're just going to start off the row the same way we've been doing. We will knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, and purl. The difference now with the end, so that was our first 6 stitches. As you can see, all the way down the edge of my blanket here is that beautiful simple seed stitch pattern, with the rest of it being those twisted pattern. But now all we're going to do is across this entire row we're going to continue the seed stitch. So we're just going to continue alternating knits and purls across this entire row, and we're going to do that for 7 rows, and then we're going to bind off. So I'm just pulling out some yarn here so we can get across this whole row, but we are going to again just continue that seed stitch pattern until we get to the end, turn the work, same thing back, and we're going to do seed stitch for 7 rows, and then we'll bind off.
Alright, so we finished those last 7 rows in the seed stitch pattern. Let's see if we can get a good look at it here. It looks good. It should look just like the seed stitch pattern on the edge. It should look just like the seed stitch pattern from the beginning when you cast on and worked your setup rows. So pretty simple finish, like I said, but I love using this pattern as a border to any blanket. It really just makes it nice and clean, a nice clean edge. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bind off with just a regular bind off. If you're not as familiar with binding off, you can check out one of the bind off videos that I have on my beginner knitting playlist here on YouTube, and you can get a good idea of how to do that. But basically all we do is we're going to knit 2, and once you have 2 stitches on your right needle, we're going to take the left needle into the first stitch, and we're going to pull it over that stitch, pull the right needle back through, basically connecting the 2. So keep it kind of loose. Our cast on was loose, especially if you used the technique that I like with casting on with 2 needles. So especially if you did it that way, make sure that we're not pulling these bind off stitches super tight. That's just going to make it a little scrunched up on the top, and we want to keep this nice and loose. So nothing too fancy here. We're going to continue this all the way across. You can see this bind off method is just going to give it a nice clean finish here. And then once we have this all completely bound off on the top, we're going to lay it out and take a look and see how it looks. See how the pattern came together. Sometimes it's a little challenging doing these big projects like this, because you don't truly get to see what it's going to look like until you're completely finished. Especially with a blanket this size, it's bunched up on these circular needles. This really, once we're done, we get it bound off here and we lay it out. That's going to be the first time we truly get to see what it looks like, the size that it turned out to be, and really get the good feel for how this pattern works out. So I'm going to finish the bind off here, and then we'll see you guys when it's all finished, and you can see what my finished product looks like. And I'd appreciate it if you like this video, and if you followed along and made this blanket, you can send me a picture of your finished product. We'll share that on our website, or you can leave it in the comments below. We love seeing the work that our friends here on the Nitty Gritty have made with us. So I'll see you at the end of this bind off row and we'll go from there. So I finished that bind off like I was showing you guys earlier, and I was able to spread this blanket out for the first time and see how the pattern finished up. And like I said in the beginning, you can make this as big or as small as you need it to be, but this is before it's blocked. You can see that pattern, and the twists almost look like little bubbles. If you don't block it, it'll stay like this, and then it'll look great. The one that I showed you in the photos in the beginning of this video, I blocked that one. I stretched it out and it came out nice and flat. So it didn't have these raised little ridges on the twists, but I kind of like it. I'm going to leave this one like this. I'm not going to block it. It came out nice and square. The edges look great. That seed stitch border looks great. So all in all, I think that's a finished product. We're just going to weave in the ends, those tag ends like we had, like you normally would, and we're going to call this a finished product and give it to my new nephew. So thanks everybody for watching.